Well, they didn't manage to get Brian Flores out of Minnesota, but they got his heir apparent. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network. Today is Town Hall Tuesday. That means I am answering your questions as submitted to me via the Google Doc in the show notes. If you ever have a question for me, no matter what time of the week it is, go ahead and drop it in there, and I'll get around to it the next Tuesday. The first question that I am going to answer comes from Luke Braun's assist machine. Thanks, homie. So, how much does it hurt the Vikings losing Daronte Jones? Thank you for the setup. So, Daronte Jones is the Washington Commanders DC. If you are a Commanders fan who has come to listen a little bit about Daronte Jones, here's the deal on him. The question from our angle is, what do you lose with Daronte Jones? He's going to run the Flores defense. If you are new to Locked On Vikings and you want to find stuff about the Flores defense, you can find a ton of stuff back in the library of these shows. Just search it out. Or you can find an entire breakdown of how this works on my Patreon page at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Go to the Football 201 collection, and you can actually find a whole rundown on how the blitzes are constructed, the coverages that he uses, and kind of the bare bones basics, day one install basically, of the Flores D. What the Vikings lose, and Andrew Kramer reported on this a little bit, and the understanding that I think everybody has with Daronte Jones. He was the pass game coordinator on defense and the D-backs coach, right? In terms of developing D-backs, the Vikings haven't really done that at all. That's not really what I think Daronte Jones has gotten the blame for. Maybe that's on something else. That's more on the scheme or whatever, but young D-backs have not really come along in the Flores D. So that's not what it's about. It's about schematic stuff. It's about this. The idea is that these crazy pass coverage rotations, this, sim pressure with the safety and then drop him back into middle third, this nonsense, that Daronte Jones is drawing up some of that. That some of that is his brainchild. Some of that is Brian Flores' brainchild. So the two would sit in a room together and concoct unholy things. And now you got part of that. That's what I think the Commanders are gaining, what the Vikings are losing. I think you would maybe get just a little bit less of the cool ideas, right? It'll be that much less potent and cool. It's not like Flores is going to stop doing that, but he'll have one of his better idea guys not in the building anymore. So maybe there's that many fewer ideas. Otherwise, I don't think it makes a huge difference. Somebody asked, do you have any names that come up to replace? And no, I do not. Sometimes they'll take a guy from the college ranks. They'll take guys that I've never heard of. That's just not. There are so many options. Everybody's assistant DB's coach, a bunch of colleges. There's tons of guys that could possibly be qualified. But when we do know the name, my thing is usually to wait for when we do know a name and then research that guy really hard rather than spending a bunch of energy trying to research 30 guys. So stay tuned for that. Whenever they do fill that position, they have to fill an O-line coach position as well. And it's not impossible that there are other ones that they want to fill. We'll see how the staff really finalizes here as the Vikings continue to kind of talk out what's going on. They just got word that they're getting Brian Flores back, so they move on to the next thing, and we'll see what kind of news keeps coming on. Sam asks, there's been increasing commentary from analysts like Ted Wynn, Bobby Peters, and Cody Alexander arguing that coaches who run, all three guys, great stuff, by the way, that coaches who run great schemes like Mike McDaniel, Raheem Morris, Grant Udinski are inherently great or interesting head coaching candidates. Have we reached a point where schematic brilliance outweighs leadership and player management? In the real world, probably not. But those three analysts that you mentioned are all film analysis guys. They are scheme guys. They're tape watchers and scheme enjoyers. So it makes sense that they would be the ones that focus on how cool the coolest schemes are. And hey, get the guy with the cool scheme. Look, and here's all the 9 articles I've written about it, right? Kind of makes sense that they would gravitate toward that. I don't think that means leadership is less important in the football cognoscenti, but it is also something that's way harder to pin down. You kind of have to go with beat reporting for that, and beat reporting can be vague. It can be wink, wink, nudge, nudge at a lot of stuff. They don't say a lot of things super outright. Hey, this person led this charge, did this thing. You have to read between the lines a little bit, which can make it a little bit harder to nail down who is the leader, right? I think all the time about the 2017 Eagles and how the narrative for who the real driver of that success was changed as guys got more or less popular, right? It was Doug Peterson. And then it wasn't Doug Peterson, actually. It was Frank Reich. And it was John DeFilippo right off the bat. DeFilippo was supposed to be the next thing. So, the Vikings were excited to get him. And obviously it wasn't him. And then it was Peterson again. And it kind of just depended on who the hot name was. But who is the true leader in Philadelphia that made that thing work? And I still, to this day, don't think we have a great sense. It's just not publicly available info, especially for guys who aren't part of media rooms and local beats, but are rather doing their own independent thing like Cody Alexander or Bobby Peters. James Kunow asks, do you think the pass defense will looked better because teams felt more inclined to run on us due to our shaky run defense, or did it genuinely improve on a snap-to-snap basis compared to last year? Yeah, it was better. It was absolutely better. If you just ignore the run plays and you only look at the times where they did pass, it was better. Now, there are factors that, you get a good sack on a blitz and it's 2nd and 14. Well, that's huge. That's in and of itself going to be statistically significant, but it also is going to lead to a better situation and stuff, which metrics like EPA and DVOA attempt to adjust for that kind of thing. But I think there is still kind of in its bones, there's going to be something uncaptured by contextual adjustments. It's just one of those things that's analytics is always going to be trying to wrestle, and it's a very difficult moving target. But to the question, it's not like teams just didn't pass the ball against the Vikings. I don't think that they got inordinate amount of run pass ratio. They didn't get a lot of run plays against them compared to once you compare for situationally. It's not like people were just running down their throat all day long. They did have to throw the ball, and those pass plays went really poorly, especially when it was a young quarterback. So I do think that it is definitely real in the sense where it wasn't just a run game carrying the offense situation. Max says something. I haven't talked about this yet on the show, so thank you for asking. Mike Pettin went on a show/podcast. It was the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Podcast, which is a Locked On show, and said that he and Flores had disagreements about how to handle things, which led Pettin to coaching offense last year. He flipped to the other side. He was an assistant on offense. Has there been any other reporting about what could have caused this difference of opinion and causing a defensive coach to switch to offense and potentially retire versus working with Flores? The retirement, I don't think it's Flores drove the guy to retirement, because I doubt he interacted with Flores a lot if he was on the offensive side of the ball as just part of Kevin O'Connell's brain trust. Context here, too, to remind you, Kevin O'Connell and Mike Pettin are very dear friends. Mike Pettin hired Kevin O'Connell to his first coaching job way back in 2015 in Cleveland, and they've been fast friends ever since. And Pettin has been a mentor to O'Connell and stuff. They're very close, tight-knit people. So being an advisor more directly to O'Connell does make sense outside of that context. So we needed something like this to really confirm, okay, there was an issue. There are a lot of different people that would look a camera dead in the eye and say publicly, hey, Brian Flores is a jerk. He's probably a jerk. I don't know. There's a lot of people that say he's a jerk. He's probably a jerk. You can be a jerk. NFL coaching is maybe one of the only places in the whole world where you're super allowed to be a jerk. But obviously, people need to be willing to work with you. I don't know. I saw that clip. It's pretty vague. It raises a lot more questions than it answers, which makes me not really that keen to comment on it, and that's why I haven't so far. But the idea that Flores is kind of hard to work with is probably true, based on Ryan Fitzpatrick had one last year, Tua earlier last year. That is very well documented, but that's also acceptable. That's not an unacceptable way to be in this context. There is a culture to NFL coaching that if we from the outside just kind of have to accept and understand. It's like if you came across an uncontacted, rainforest tribe and they were doing something really weird that you didn't understand. Well, that makes all the sense in the world to them. And I think there is a similar cultural football aspect that we don't have to get it. I think the narrative is still that Flores has, mellowed out a little bit, that he's improved a little bit. But yeah, if he's hard to work with and Mike Pettin didn't like it, then that is what it is. And, considering Mike Pettin's reputation over the last 10 years as a defensive mind, maybe he had some bad ideas. I don't know. But also, that's me just totally making something up and guessing. Who knows? Adam asks, what's stopping a team from hiring an ever-increasing amount of coaches so that every granular detail can be coached, or give every player an individual coach who reports up to position coaches? When does it become too much coaching? How many people is too many? That is definitely too many. Too much coaching is definitely a thing. And I think we saw it with J.J. McCarthy this year, if I can continue to speculatively guess. That's what it feels like to me, that there was just too many things in his head, too many people talking. This is a tug of war. This is a balancing act that every business in the world has to deal with, is how much staff is correct versus how they cost, which is going to be less of an issue for NFL teams that rake in money like nobody's business. The revenue's insane, right? You have room for that extra coach if you want him, but also how many people is an effective team? How many NFL coaches does it take to screw in a light bulb, right? There's definitely a too many cooks in the kitchen thing. If you get 6 different people who all have their own opinions on how the QB or the wide receiver or the young whoever is supposed to be coached, and then they all start coaching him in different ways, all you're going to do is confuse the dude. So it needs to be enough where all of the legwork can get done, but not so many that there isn't a focused direction. I don't know what that number is, and I'm glad it's not my job to figure that out. I've got a bunch more questions coming up here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, the Timberwolves are fantastic. The Minnesota Wild are fantastic. The Minnesota Frost, how about them? Back-to-back champs, baby. There is nothing like going to a game, and that's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back in your hands. You don't have to deal with long lines. You don't have to deal with hidden fees. What you see on the app is what you get. All-in price up front. You can see the view from your seat right from the get-go, so you know exactly what it looks like. Make sure you're satisfied with the view. And there's all kinds of great last-minute options, too. So if you get a spontaneous idea or you just put it off, no worries at all. NBA tickets show up at solid prices. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One last Sunday, one last kickoff, and one last chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. And if you're like so many Vikings fans and Sam Darnold winning the Lombardi Trophy would bring you pain because of seller's remorse, put a bet on Sam Darnold. Put him in your same game parlay or whatever, and then suddenly you're rooting for him. And if it happens, you're super stoked. And it's going to feel so much better. And then if you lose the bet, well, at least you didn't have to worry about the thing in the first place. You cannot be killed. You cannot be defeated. You cannot be conquered. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. And if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Then you can go turn around and use those on the NBA, the NHL, the women's hockey, the Olympics, whatever you want. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you are an everydayer and you haven't done it already, what are you doing? Go ad-free. Go to the Everydayer Club at lockedonvikings.supercast.com. There's links in the show notes or YouTube description, as it were, and you can get these episodes completely interruption-free, plus access to a special Discord server where Locked On hosts are sitting around, chatting, shooting the shoot. Nailed it. Let's move on with some more questions here on Town Hall Tuesday. The next one comes from Hindsight Astronomer, who says, it's clear from the last 2 Seahawks games that these moments aren't just too big for Sam Darnold, and he's simply predisposed to folding under the bright lights, even though the evidence we had available at the time of letting him walk suggested he would cap out at a shallow playoff run. that encourages us to reevaluate the end of his season with us and what led to the offensive meltdowns against the Lions and Rams with everything to play for. Is the problem still in the building? I fear it is. I fear that the problem is still in the building. I think the problems with the offense that when the offense played poorly in 2024, those last two games, but also there was a game in Jacksonville where they struggled. And there were, other times where they would kind of sputter out and have these big, long, cold streaks where I remember complaining about Kevin 07 on and how he would go, pass. And it would be like shot. I'd call it shot play salad and all that. And he would go for the deep, big, giant thing all the time. And then Sam Darnold would also go for the big, deep, giant thing all the time because they both saw eye to eye on that and they would like reinforce each other. And so when one was too deep ball happy, the other wouldn't stop it, wouldn't put a lid on it. And when they were both too deep ball happy, it would go 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10 punt. That very clearly still happened and maybe even got worse this year with JJ McCarthy. So yes, I would say that the chief problem of the offense over the last couple years, to me, has been over-aggression. It's been going for the explosive too many times and not linking up those explosives often enough to make up for all the plays you're pissing away by giving up a sack on a triple move salad play call. That is going to show up more against high-level teams, especially with high-level pass rushes. And in games where, the margins are a lot thinner because the other team across from you is good, it's going to feel a lot more. So, yeah, and I would say Sam Darnold probably got too much blame for that ending. He did not play well in those two games. Like, you're not wrong that to be like, oh, no, he actually played pretty well and it was secretly this other thing. No, he had two bad games, and I think he probably just got a little bit too much heat for it, and the Vikings were too keen to move on about it. But it was also not where they were. They were committed to going with the young, develop a quarterback route, and that's where the Vikings are right now. And any other team that wanted to have the wily veteran and take a chance on a one-year wonder, okay, here he is, good luck. And that's where the Seahawks are at. Lena says, do you think the very public humiliation of Darnold making the Super Bowl and playing well doing it will make the Wilfs more likely to try and make a big splash at QB? I hope not. I hope that if they were going to make a big splash at QB, it was the Vikings quarterback that made them do that. Not how embarrassing it feels right now. That would be very like emotion-based team building, and that's how you become the Jets. That's not good. You don't want to be doing that. This is very much something that this is not a decision that can be made on vibes. I think it needs to be very insular. How is JJ McCarthy projected to play next year? What does your internal thing tell you? Is he going to take a step forward? Is he going to be the same guy where you have these disaster games, but maybe a couple good ones and it's not good enough? Do you expect this huge projection? Did you expect a huge projection last year? And if that wasn't realized, have you adjusted your projections properly for that? And that goes to like Kwesi's analytics thing, but also, self-scouting and how the coaches feel and all that stuff. Like that projection, that whole pie of data has to tell you what you think is. Sam Darnold shouldn't be a part of that. You can feel as bad as you want about it, but those are fifis, not facts. And we know how much facts care about feelings, okay? A lot of people say that all the time. Non-whining fan isn't it odd that 99% of people criticizing the Vikings for moving on from Darnold don't point to a single thing they posted or said about Darnold between January 14th and September 6th, 2025? Why do you think that is? Look, if you watch the Squad Show, all right, my immediate post-game Darnold rant was laid bare for all to see. And I have no shame about that. I mean, that was the immediate, moments post-game. And I think that was probably an appropriate reaction to that game. So sure. And by the way, it was like, hey, I think this kind of solidifies that it's going to be JJ McCarthy moving forward. And it is. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but that was the way that the thing happened there. So I absolved myself. I am not guilty, Your Honor. But here's the thing, okay? I don't think fans need to reckon too bad with that. I think you should. I think you should look back at what you were saying and be like, hey, how did I feel? Try to remind yourself, give yourself some perspective, because perspective is always good. But I don't think anybody needs to be dunked on about it. The team can be dunked on about it, though. We're all fans, man. I'm a podcaster. We're all just people in the cheap seats. We'll shout anything. We can say whatever we want. There are no laws here. This is a lawless wasteland for us, and that's great. That's beautiful. We can every opinion exists. That's what Town Hall Tuesday is. It's so I can hear opinions from you guys in the form of a question that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have been exposed to. The team, you guys got to get that right, though. That's your job. You're supposed to be the guys that know the stuff about all of it, the things. So know the stuff about the things. Like what you have to. They have to be better at self-scouting, and we can be results-based about coming to that conclusion. We can look and say, hey, you made a big commitment to guys like Ivan Pace and Theo Jackson, and then halfway through the season, you rebuked that. You changed your mind because it went really poorly. At some point internally, you have made the wrong decision about this player, whether it was at the beginning or at the end. Where was that and why does it keep happening? That's a legit question. But for me, I'm wrong about draft takes all the time because I'm not an NFL employee. I don't have this experience. I am, as one journalist once put it, a carnival barker. And that's what you come to me for. I try to make it as reasonable as possible. And we try to learn things. We try to get better. I love to hold myself to the standards of an NFL person. But at the end of the day, I can be wrong and full-throatedly continue to do my job. That is what this job is. And it's so different from the NFL where the stakes are so much higher for being wrong about that thing. Bad Dad Joke says, how much do you think KOC's refusal to embrace the run is due to personnel versus scheme or a philosophical difference? We know how much KOC loves his explosive plays, but would he actually run more with a running back who could turn that into chunk plays and points more frequently? Yeah, so J.J. McCarthy's the worst quarterback. I mean, this season was the worst quarterback season the Vikings have seen this millennium, right? So if he wasn't going to pull off of the pass game and be more run happy this year, it was never going to be about that. And so I kind of doubt that if you give a coach Adrian Peterson, it's going to change and warp things. It always would. But I think short of an outlier like that, like the superstar of superstars, first ballot Hall of Famer type, short of that, he probably just thinks passing is better. This is a team that rewards aggression. This is a team that wants explosiveness on both sides of the ball. They want to hit the home run. They swing at dingers. It's what they do. And it doesn't really jive with even good run games. It might influence what kind of run game they want to build. Maybe they want a famine feast type like Adrian Peterson. And, who doesn't? But I don't think it's a personnel thing. I think it's a philosophical thing. I think Kevin O'Connell just thinks that a successful offense passes 75% of the time, and they probably got data to back that up. Okay, I've got a few more questions here on Locked On Vikings to get through, including some very interesting hindsight draft analysis. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels so good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close things out strong. It makes it so much more exciting to watch a game between the Seahawks and Patriots that we otherwise, other than former Vikings, like we don't have connections to those teams. We don't have Patriots beef here in Minnesota, right? But PrizePicks can give you a little bit of a stake, and it's super easy. Pick two or more players and choose more or less on their projections. You can even do a former Viking thing. Sam Darnold, Stephon Diggs, maybe a Sam Darnold sacks to represent Garrett Bradbury if you want. Or you can throw in an NBA player in there. Why not? A Naz Reid 3 in the fourth quarter. You can do that. Early payouts is my favorite feature, though, which lets you cash out if a player gets off to a hot start and you don't want to try to sweat out the rest of the game. You can mix stars from different teams and build lineups that fit how you watch the game. So if you I mean, you know everything about sports. Of course you do. You're listening to a podcast. You're the smartest sports fan of all time. So go put it to the test. It is so good to be right with PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's so good to be right. Moving along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Hey, I am probably, if you are a Commanders fan still listening, hey, I might go on Locked On Commanders soon. I at least sent David a clip, so somewhere in there I'll be on that. If you want to listen to how they're feeling about Daronte Jones. Next question, though, comes from Tyler Twelveness, expert on Seahawks fans, who asks, perhaps controversial, but I've been curious, how nailed on is Brian O'Neill's job? I get that if he's on the roster, he's the starting right tackle, but is he at the stage of his career where we need to seriously consider a replacement? No, he is not at the stage of his career where I would expect a decline in play. I think he does fine. He has been a fine right tackle. And to me, a fine right tackle isn't somebody that you never notice all year. That's an elite right tackle. A fine right tackle is somebody that you, for the most part, don't think about unless you're really watching him. And I think Brian O'Neill has been a really, really stabilizing presence, as right guard has been a total turnstile around, what Will Fries did this year, Ed Ingram before him, many, many bad names before that. Brian O'Neill has been a stabilizing presence for all of those guys. He's always really clean with a double. He has a lot of times he catches the best pass rusher on the other team because they don't want to send that guy against Darisaw. So he is the one catching the hardest matchups. And then you're just like, okay, just only give up 1 sack and 3 pressures and we're happy. And then, hey, you're going to take some ugly losses doing that there. Unless, you're the Trent Williams of the right side, or if you're like Penei Sewell, right? But I don't expect that from Brian O'Neill. And so to me, he's always been that good. And last year he was as good as he always is. And he was playing on a bum knee, if you recall, for a lot of that year too. So I think, how nailed on is it right now? That is very nailed to the ground. The thing is, he's in the last year of a contract and there's a big cap number on that. So I would expect some kind of extension, and I would expect there to be 2 years of that extension, maybe 3, that are like super, super locked in with, they're uncuttable. There's too much dead cap. There's guaranteed salary. And then after year 3, maybe even a 4th year of that, it starts to get, hey, there's going to be no guarantees. And then he's going to be 33 and you'll be approaching him. Hey, maybe we should make a pay cut out of this. Or is he going to be a cap casualty? And you have more serious conversations about it. Dennis asks, it's no secret that, one more thing about Brian O'Neill's contract. That dude got restructured like 100 times and he's still cuttable in the last year of his deal. I don't know what magic that is, but for the kicking the can down the road haters, you're going to have to hold that one. Dennis asks, it's no secret that Kwesi's drafting has been subpar. And it got me wondering what the outcome of the drafts have been, at least in the first few rounds, if the Vikings just picked the highest player left on a Reefs consensus big board for each of the Kwesi drafts. And would the Vikings be in a better roster situation if they deferred to the wisdom of the crowd? So this is a bit of an awkward thing because I don't know how to deal with trades with this exercise, but I did look it up both sides. So 2022, when they were on the clock at number 12, Kyle Hamilton, he was like 4th on the big board there. So everybody wanted them to take Kyle Hamilton. They should have taken Kyle Hamilton, and the consensus big board also agrees with that. I don't think that changes too much about how we feel. But if you accept, if you don't adjust for, if you just say when they were on the clock at 32, who should they have picked? And you just look at it that way and you don't evaluate the trades. The highest big board play. Can you guess? Guess in the comments before I say it. Okay. Pause the video. Guess. Go write it. I'll wait. Okay, you're back? You're good? It was Andrew Booth. So I guess not a lot of difference there. In 2023, they would have taken Joey Porter Jr. over Jordan Addison, a decision that I was actually advocating for at the time. I feel like, that was my number 1 and 2 though. So I was like, if they take Joey Porter, I'm happy. If they take Jordan Addison, I'm slightly less happy, but still very happy. So I feel like vindicated on both of those. I guess that would have been fine. You would have not had Addison, but you would have had a better corner. You would have had a pretty big need at receiver, which would have then been resolved in 2024. But again, it's kind of tough because the top player on the board at pick number 10, which they traded up for, and 11, was Brock Bowers. Obviously, where the Vikings were in 2024, they probably would have been run out of town if they picked anyone that wasn't a quarterback, even if that player worked out. of quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy was the top one. There was only McCarthy and Nix left. And on the consensus big board, Nix was on a lot of those boards not even a first rounder. So that, again, that wouldn't have really followed the wisdom of crowds. And then when they were on again at pick 18, it was Dallas Turner again. So it would have been the same there. And then last year, the top player on the board for basically the entire first round of the draft was Will Johnson, the corner who went to Arizona out of Michigan. And there were some medical things with his knee that really scared a lot of teams off. So like he fell for a reason. He did stay healthy all year and played pretty well for the Cardinals defense. So it looks like they're getting away with murder on that one. The Cardinals are good for them, but like you're asking a Vikings draft to take a risk like on a risky knee. I don't know if we actually want him to go do that. So where would they have been? Well, they would have had Will Johnson, Joey Porter, and Kyle Hamilton. The secondary would have been absolutely insane. They would have had Brock Bowers and Dallas Turner. So yeah, that's a lot of better players, but they also, I don't know what they do at quarterback there. I guess with all that young talent, you re-sign Sam Darnold, you got a pretty good team there if you want to go super hindsight. The Vikings have been way against consensus though, and then their drafts have been bad. So I think that even without doing this like very hyper specific exercise, you can make a much more broad global point that kind of points at the same thing. Interesting stuff. Preetham asks, how much of the blame can we attribute for draft picks being bust to coaches' inability to develop them? Yeah, I think more than they get, but I don't want to absolve Kwesi. Like the Kyle Hamilton thing was a huge, big, bad miss. The handling of quarterback, even though I laid a lot of the blame at the feet of Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi still owns his share of that, if only for the way that he decided to handle it, maybe being a little bit overly confident in their head coach. I don't really blame him for 20. I only did the first round on that exercise, by the way. But yeah, I mean, you got all kinds of other draft blunders, like taking Ty Felton over like a bunch of other better receivers that came after him. And of course the, Lewis Seen and all that, and Dallas Turner over Jared Verse, which doesn't look nearly as bad after this year. Those guys basically went blow for blow this year, and just looks like maybe Dallas Turner needed a year. But yeah, let's put it this way. You got to kind of take it draft pick by draft pick, right? I don't think you can make a global assumption about this, because there are examples, I would say, of guys that were supposed to be very pro ready coming in the league and then just not doing very well at all and flaming out. And that's okay. You misevaluated that. You navigated the draft poorly. You made the wrong pick. And then there's, hey, we brought in this raw, sculptable clay, Brian Asamoah type guy, and you just didn't develop him. And to me, that's not on when that happens, that's not on the GM at all. This guy was raw, and they knew he was raw. They knew that he wasn't going to play well in his first season. And then if the coaches go, God, this guy sucks, and then don't develop, it's like, what are we doing here? We need better communication about this. We need a more clear expectation of what those young players need to do, which is organizational as much as it is on staff or GM. It's on the entire operation saying, hey, you gave me a raw player. What up? I needed a real player, right? And if that's the way the coaches feel, then that needs to be hashed out. But it's just very like shocked Pikachu face. Like raw player plays rawly and then team gives up on him is way too common a pattern in the NFL, and the lack of patience in all NFL teams. And I think the Vikings are guilty of plenty of sin here is really frustrating to me. But it's like not enough to get Kwesi off the hot seat, right? But definitely enough to be worth considering, hey, do we need to only go with veteran players? Do we only need to draft 26-year-olds that already know what they're doing because you can't teach stuff? And if so, are you the right guy for the job? Rob Bach asks, this will be the last question for the day, in regard to the 4 defensive needs that I mentioned on yesterday's show. For review, it was a run-stuffing defensive tackle, a safety that can pass rush a little bit, a linebacker that's versatile and can pass rush a little bit, and a corner that can sit on the outside and not suck against wide receiver too. Assuming some of those guys are going to be draft picks, can you give me an estimate on how early you'd probably need to draft someone to adequately fill the roles you are describing? This is a great question, and I think it puts those needs into perspective and makes it feel a little more doable than being like, oh, look, there's no cap and the roster has all these holes. Blah. We don't need to do that. So, for example, a defensive tackle, a run-stuffing defensive tackle, this can be a 4th-round pick. This can absolutely be a day 3 guy. Because I'm not asking this guy to be a starter. I'm asking this guy to come on, base packages, play 35% of snaps. And that can absolutely be somebody like, Jaquelin Roy popping in. That can be what Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins did this year, but with a different role. But it can be that size of role for sure. And that was a 5th-round pick. So 3rd, 4th, 5th-round pick, some mid-round guy. Yeah, absolutely. A safety that can pass rush, that's probably a little bit more expensive. That's probably more of a day 2 thing to me. Doesn't necessarily need to be a 1st-round guy, although there's a couple of 1st-round safeties that might intrigue you. But it's probably a higher thing. That's a more valuable deal. A linebacker that is versatile. This one's interesting because I don't need you to be the most, disciplined run thumper. I don't need you to be somebody that has crazy, hyena athleticism. I kind of just need you to be a point and shoot, and you can get that guy in the Brian Asamoah world. You can 3rd round that, I think. And then a cornerback who can sit on the outside and not suck against wide receiver too. That probably has to be a higher pick. I think what you want. Look, I have for a long time hoped that Brian Flores' defense could implement man coverage and have the secondary talent to do it. They're still very far away from that, and they have been very far away from that since COVID. It's been forever, right? But more likely what the Vikings view the need at. This is me asking, right? But I'm probably not going to get what I'm asking for. The Vikings probably view that need more as we need a Shaq Griffin type. And you can get that guy on the waivers. You literally could have gotten Shaq Griffin on waivers this year if you wanted him. Or, the Jeff Okudah world. So that guy's probably not, that's again like a day 3 pick. So all of these guys could be mid-round picks, and some of these needs will be filled in free agency. But I don't think this is all guys that need to be 1st round. You have to put your star at it. No, absolutely not. A lot of these things that I'm asking for are role players. Some of these guys can be rotational. Some of these guys can be, a little bit more under the radar additions that can potentially be part of a plan moving forward. Like with linebacker, you could be a guy that goes 50-50 with Ivan Pace. And you could just have kind of 2 Ivan Paces that maybe have different roles or something like that. And maybe you can make it work that way. But I don't think you need to, if they're not in the top 20, they don't matter, which is the way a lot of people approach the draft. And I think that's short-sighted. But I will talk to you all tomorrow where the horrors persist. And as always, Skol.